What place gets creepy when you're alone? Hotel. I work at a hotel. And actually one time in a dozen years of me working there was one day we had absolutely no guests in house. I did not like that one bit. I hated being in that huge building all by myself. Similarly, dorm buildings. Former app. During closing time it was so eerie, especially with every door open and the large communal showers all alone. You know what makes that worse? When you're in the basement and all the lights are off and the only other person in the building is your co on the top floor and you hear running and giggling at odd intervals. Turns out some of the ras in my area decided to play hide and seek in my dorm and didn't bother to tell me till I went out and almost decked a person. I stayed in the dorm a couple days into spring break once and almost no one was on campus. I had the brilliant idea of watching all 3 Godfather movies since I had a DVDs. They aren't scary, so I didn't really think anything of it until I had to get up and shower for an early flight. With the dark, emptiness and quiet, I could not shake the feeling someone was going to come around a corner and try to whack me. Similar situation in a dorm on campus. It was when I was visiting to see if I wanted to attend. You can choose to stay at a hotel or in one of the dorm rooms. Did not see a single person the entire time I was on the floor and the only person I interacted with was the rat at the front desk 4 floors below. Was pretty freaky couple of days. Public toilets at 4 AM. Rest areas are not a good place to be from dusk till dawn. My school bus stopped at a rest stop at 2 AM for our senior trip. Creepy enough at 2 AM. But most of the state is surrounded by woods and teenagers are assholes. So instead of buddy system they'll do their business and sprint to the bus. Screw you if you're still washing your hands. On a school trip to New York, our bus stopped at a gas station in the middle of the night and a bunch of kids ages 14 to 18 filed in to use the bathroom and buy snacks. While cops were arresting a guy, they just held him there while all us milled around. I accidentally made eye contact with the guy and said oops and left. Sounds like a normal night at a gas station in a shady area lol. I worked at one of those, but I'm a woman and the owner was great. So he never let female employees work the night shift because he knew shit went down and people are worse towards women. According to my coworkers, I got to miss out on shootings and stabbings that happened in the parking lot. We had stuff go down during the day shifts too, but not as bad or as frequent. The library. I work in a big 60-year-old academic library. I have recently started using my office from time to time with everyone else still working from home. I'm ashamed to say I turned all of the lights on the floor on while I was there. The bathrooms are the creepiest. They haven't ever been updated and have a real 1960s feel. You described my university's main library perfectly. I'm sure yours is as creepy as you say when no one else is there. But on a lighter note, I love my library with its retro study carrels and the book smell and the endless rows of shelves. My heart will break if they ever renovate all the floors. Does the study group hog the one big room all the time? No, we are lucky enough to have several floors with like 10 study rooms each. I usually opt for the 70s wooden study carrels. Then on my way out I randomly wander the stacks and find the weirdest stuff. Like the books about cheese making, or a whole section of old dissertations, or shelves and shelves of books in Cyrillic. Quarantine sucks. I miss the library. My house when I've been watching conspiracy theories for hours, especially unsolved murders and stuff. The whole show Unsolved Mysteries actually. When I was 11 in the early 90s, I used to sleepwalk after watching Unsolved Mysteries. It got so bad that my mother won't let me watch it anymore. Edit. Missing word. Roller rink. I used to work at a roller hockey facility and often close the place alone. The sound still traveled and it sounded like I was being followed. Even creepier now that in some places, skating rinks have been converted into emergency morgues to house the massive number of COVID casualties. I didn't know that. That scares me. Ice skating, I believe. What? The parking lot when you leave work late at night. Story time. Back in 2014 I was working an evening shift in an industrial area. So I'd arrive for work around 4 PM and leave around 1 AM. My ride was the family's cargo van. They used it to deliver produce that had no windows in the back. Oh, and the locks didn't work. So I'd come out at 1 AM to an empty parking lot and climb into my murder van that had been unlocked and unattended the 8 to 9 hours prior. And then hop in and hope for the best. NGL. Some nights I'd creep myself out and wind up swerving wildly in the parking lot on the way out to toss any hiding kidnappers / murderers that were waiting in the dark for me. That sounds terrifying, but I laughed out loud at murder van. People were probably more scared of you than you were of them, hahaha. Yeah, you were honestly probably saved by that thing on at least one occasion. I bet some killer was stalking the parking lot just for that exact scenario, but only found a vehicle belonging to a potentially more dangerous murderer, and no doubt, even psychopaths were taught not to get into windowless vans with strangers. Below ground levels of a hospital. Worked third shift in a major hospital. Had to bring samples to the lab in the basement at all hours of the night. Seriously one of the creepiest places I've ever been. It was pristinely clean with fluorescent lighting which just gave it a really weird vibe to me for some reason. There's one main hall that is about 300 to 400 feet long with corridors splitting off the whole way. I always pictured a zombie from 28 Days Later sprinting towards me from the other end. I absolutely hated when I'd have to go into the basement during night shift. Worked in an old, huge hospital. You'd get off that elevator and knew you were alone, but you were also waiting for someone to pop out from around a corner. The worst was having to bring bodies down to the morgue. Just you, a tech, and a body rolling with squeaky wheels down a long ass hallway. I'd get back to the elevator to go back upstairs and get that feeling like someone is behind you, so you're rushing. Even though you know no one is there. Just one of the many reasons I was glad all my patients were alive come 7 AM. Yeah, the last 20 seconds waiting for the elevator to open and close are not fun. That's when shit goes down. According to the movies anyway, Exorcism of Emily Rose was too scary for me and my girlfriend. Midway up the basement stairs, after turning the lights off at the bottom. Who the hell installs a light switch at the bottom of the stairs rather than the top? Oh, there's a light in the stairwell with a switch at the top. I'm talking about the basement room going dark and you're in the stairwell with nothing but darkness at the bottom of the stairs. But why wouldn't you just wire it so that all the basement lights are controlled by the switch at the top of the stairs? It's a 1200 square foot basement which is framed and wired to be finished eventually. If it were to be finished, you would not want one switch responsible for every room in the basement. It would be convenient for me now, admittedly. Empty school. Yes, I worked in a preschool that was converted from an old elementary school, and closing up at night was so creepy. I refused to look in any windows. You can't see anything you don't want to see if you're not looking. The gyms and bathrooms are even worse. True, it was actually a YMCA and it was really scary. Our gym lights were motion activated, and we would regularly come into them being on. Hard pass. A lot of HVAC systems will trigger sensor-based tech by blowing on any papers or plants or other items that may trigger the sensors. Had it happen a lot at one of the restaurants I worked at with the alarm system, so could be that. There's a stretch of road in my hometown where a few teenagers have died in car accidents. 3 kids on 2 separate occasions in the same spot. There are few street lights and wooded lots surrounding it. That stretch of road is very creepy at 1 in the morning when you're alone in the car. Sometimes they like to have reenactments with cars driving by. When I was growing up there was a deranged kid in our street. He would dress up and make up like a dead body and lie on the road pretending to be dead. People would naturally slow down and maneuver around him. When traffic was slow enough, he would suddenly get up and run through an alleyway, getting to the next traffic light before the last car who saw him lying down. He would then jump in front of the car, all bloody, looking really mad, and pointing a finger at the driver. He caused more than one fender bender as terrified drivers stepped on the brakes. What the heck was this kid's parents doing? The hell? He was also the neighborhood's go-to guy for drugs. Practically any room in my house after I watch a horror movie. You know, this reminds me. One year when I was in grad school, I had to stay over Thanksgiving break to do work on a research grant. My girlfriend very kindly volunteered to stay with me. She had a small, even by college town standards, studio apt with a twin bed. And I lived with 3 guys in a rental house with an iceberg room and a queen bed. So we decided to stay at my place. The house was at the very end of a residential road and backed up onto a hollow with some thick vegetation and a stream. I think literally 98% of the people on the surrounding streets were also college students in rental houses. So my street and the adjacent ones were all pretty much barren and silent over the Thanksgiving break. Stupidly, my girlfriend and I decided to watch It Follows one of the nights we were there alone. That movie OFC was creepy by itself. But then being in that 50-plus-year-old house on an empty road with dark woods behind us, that night just put it over the edge. We heard everything. Every rat and raccoon and armadillo in the backyard. Every acorn hitting the roof. And at one point we swore we heard something out front. We eventually fell asleep probably at like 6 AM when the sun was coming up. Well, the next day, I go out to my car. I drove an old beat up Jeep. And believe it or not, the canvas top was unzipped and someone had jimmied the glove box and ashtray open. So actually we probably had heard someone out there. The cops said it was probably a homeless guy going around because he/she knew the kids were on break and houses were easy targets then. Needless to say, we spent the next 2 nights in my girlfriend's twin bed. Dark roads in the middle of the night. Scarier if another car is with you, following you, just far enough behind you that you occasionally think you might have lost him. But then you look in the rearview mirror and see those headlights coming around the curve. And then nobody's following you anymore. You feel a sense of relief. A few minutes later your headlight starts to flicker. Your car stops on its own. You check the gas meter. It's empty. In a panic you feel your back pocket where you normally place your phone. It's not there. Basements. If there's hundreds of spiders and other insects around you, are you really alone? The middle of the ocean. Yes, my wife, son and I went on a cruise last summer. At night I'd go out on the balcony and read when they went to bed, out in the middle of the Atlantic with no lights anywhere. It's super cool, but also very unsettling. Seeing another ship off in the distance was strangely reassuring. I'm a teenager and went on a cruise with my family last fall. Being with my siblings and the strangers I met and turned into friends while being on the top deck looking out into the water, or being in the 24/7 diner at 3 AM is very weird. Cruises are a great time. I'd been on one years ago, but this was the first time for my wife and son. Definitely plan on another once the world stops ending. Gas stations at 3 AM, especially ones that are in the middle of nowhere. To me it's everything around the gas station that's the problem. Where I live, gas stations are basically like little supermarkets with people working in them, even during the night, and even in the middle of nowhere. So the scariest part is looking at the complete darkness surrounding the gas station. The woods near my apartment complex at night. They are. But how else is supposed to keep an eye on you? Pressed up against the window, like normal people. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.